Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And the Predators are in action again tonight, continuing their West Coast road trip. Preds taking on the LA Kings in LA. Puck drop at 9:30, and of course, we'll have the full game call and pregame coverage starting at 8:30 right here on 1025 and 1063, The Game. D-Mase is here. Willy Donick joins us from LA. Willy, if you could maybe drop a little hint that a 9:30 puck drop doesn't necessarily align with my bedtime, I would appreciate that.
I would be all right with that. I would not mind a 5:00 start out here. That's fine. We don't have to battle the LA traffic because we're staying right next to the arena. So I'd be cool with that. I'll talk to some people here, Caroline, see what I can do.
I know that the Predators are very concerned about me getting enough sleep every night, so I think that they would take that to heart.
Yeah, we got a plane. We've got a flight after the game, so we'll get there a little bit earlier for the next stop, which is San Jose. So, yeah, I think we're all on the same page here.
D-Mase is here as well. D-Mase, how we doing?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. Now that my phone is back up, I told Nick, I said, the phone was on SOS, so obviously a lot of people, 70,000 people, phones weren't working. But then I came in here because I knew it would have Wi-Fi. And I saw all these Wi-Fi names, and then it said, what did it say, Starlink Defense?
Yeah, Starlink Defender.
Yeah, and I was like, nope, that's Terminator. I saw that. I'm not clicking on that one. I'm not clicking on that one. I saw all the Terminators, and I know not to click on that one.
Just spontaneously combust.
Exactly. Robots start coming. They take control of everything. I said, nope.
Oh,
I'm going to
man,
leave
those
it.
are scary.
Mm-hmm.
Phone's working?
Phone, well, mine is, and
Okay,
I'm sure there are other people's phone that probably isn't working, but mine's working now. So
What a weird and funky thing.
Yeah, it
but
was.
You know where you can go to when your phone's not working?
Where's that?
Local radio right here
Yes.
on 1025 and 1063 The Game.
And if you want to see the pretty faces of everybody on the radio, on the YouTube or Twitch or Twitter. Correct.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. All right, like we mentioned, the Predators taking on the LA Kings tonight. And just like we've been saying since the All-Star break.
Hold on. I just said it was working.
And now
it's not working again.
They
So
heard
there we
us.
go. They heard
Oh,
us.
no.
Skynet got me. And now it's working
Skynet.
again.
Watch
They're
out.
messing with me.
Just stand on one
Yeah.
foot, hold your breath.
Give me a hanger so I
hold
can
your
put over
nose.
here and the kind of rabbit ear thing. So,
I'll give you some tinfoil as well.
Yeah,
I'm
put
sorry,
your tinfoil
Caroline,
hat
go
on.
ahead.
All good, all good. The Predators taking on the LA Kings tonight. Lake puck drop at 9:30. And as we've been saying, every single game from the All-Star break into the trade deadline is so incredibly critical for this team. A bubble team that, I think everybody would agree, making the playoffs would be pretty great. But as Barry Trotz said, look, you tell me. Let the team tell me what to do. So, of course, trade deadline is topic of conversation number one around here. And we'll catch up with Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet and the 32 Thoughts podcast at 1 p.m. for his weekly visit with us. But Elliot had some Predators tidbits in the written version of 32 Thoughts that came out yesterday. Elliot Friedman writes, another under-the-radar center is Nashville's Tommy Novak. Unrestricted, the Predators wish to sign him, but it's a unique salary case, and there are so few comparables. He can score 43 points in 51 games last year, heating up with 4 goals in Nashville's last 5 games. If they can't keep him, there will be interest. He's making $800,000. When it comes to UC Saros, there was a time it was 99% certain that he would stay in Tennessee. Now, people who know better than I do think it's closer to 50-50. Again, that was Elliot Friedman in the most recent written version of 32 Thoughts. I want to get to the Tommy Novak side of this because I do think that's important, but I think let's start with the juiciest little tidbit here, and that has to do with UC Saros. Per Elliot Friedman, he was 99% certain that he was picking up the phone, and Askarov was part of a trade package to move up into a top 5 pick. So we know that. And if you're willing to trade Askarov, that means that you view UC Saros as your goaltender of the future. Fast forward to now, well, that's kind of 50-50 that Saros could stay in Tennessee. So obviously something has changed. And it could be one of a few things. The fact that Askarov is playing his freaking butt off. the fact that UC Saros has been inconsistent at best. He's been hot, he's been cold, he's been great, he's been not so great. We've also seen what the team looks like. And the fact that the offense, the scoring, just frankly is not good enough. What do we make of what Elliot Friedman had to say about UC Saros? Now, according to his sources, it's more 50-50 that he'll be in Nashville.
Willie, do you think it's more so because of what Askarov is doing in Milwaukee than anything? Obviously, we know that UC has struggled at times, more times than not, more times than we would want him to. And I think it's been uncommon of him to struggle the way he has this season. But you can't put it all on him, but we know how this go. Just like the quarterback, sometimes you get too much praise, sometimes you get too much of the blame. And it seems like it's that way with UC. But do you think a part of it is because of the way this team is playing, one, and then how well Askarov is doing in Milwaukee?
I do think Askarov has continued to progress, and right now he's as hot as there is right now. But I because he's won 12 in a row. He's got 4 shutouts. His numbers are lights out. He's been tremendous. And so, as opposed to the draft last year, for example, I think he's taken some steps forward. Does that mean that if they traded UC Saros before the trade deadline, that he would be ready to handle the rigors of being the starter every night in the NHL? I think that's a big risk. I don't think that's the case at all. So I would keep that in mind if you're of the belief that trading Saros would be the move. I also don't think that Saros and the season he's had has contributed to whether the Predators want to trade him or not. It is tough to fight that, right? I think in this moment in time, in this snapshot, now Saros is coming off a really good game. He played great in that St. Louis game, and he's going to, I would anticipate, being there tonight against the Kings. So it's kind of hard to fight that in the big picture, Saros is one of the elite goalies in the NHL. He's not having an elite season so far. And meanwhile, Askarov is on a roll right now. So in this snapshot, you have this going on in your head, and you're saying, wow, Askarov's playing really well, and Juice isn't playing real well right now. Maybe I should think about this. I think that's one of the toughest things about being a GM is the rise and fall of stock in the moment, and you have to keep your eyes on the big picture as well. So the 50-50 surprised me a little bit. I would have to say that I've probably come down from in that 90% they keep them down a little bit into the 70s. But I'm trying to fight that bias myself, that Askarov is on fire and Saros has not had a great year. I still think this, though. The trade proposals that I've seen, I still haven't seen one that blows me away. And I'm still of the belief, I'm trying to stay consistent. Unless you blow me away, I think the better move is to keep Saros. And I have not seen a trade proposal that blows me away right now.
A couple things on that. Why would you why would you not be willing to trade Saros, one? And two, Barry Trotz said the same thing. Look, you got to blow me away. And I understand that. But has the price gone down?
Why would the price go down?
If Barry Trotz is looking what Askarov has done in Milwaukee and said that is our goaltender of the future, and we cannot sign UC Saros to a long-term deal and have Askarov up here with him and have both, have two elite goaltenders when we still have so few players that can score goals. That Barry Trotz might look at UC Saros and his trade value of being the catalyst to finding those young goal scorers. That what he can bring to this team is, in terms of trade capital and picks and players, is more valuable than what he can do to this team in net. Do for this team in net.
Yeah. Okay. I see that argument. And that's why I think I'm trying to stay the course in my belief, and that is still I'm not dropping the price for that reason. Let me paint a picture, and you guys tell me what this looks like. Okay, we know how sports talk radio works. We know how we know how the game works. Let's say they trade UC Saros, and it's let's just say it's Kevin Lankinen and Yaroslav Askarov as your duty. Well, Askarov is still only 21 years old. First of all, you would be playing out the rest of the season, and you're probably not looking at that hurts their chances of making the playoffs. Do you agree with that?
Which I can live with if it's,
and you can live with that.
If it's
but it would,
3 to 5
it would
years
be tough
from
to
now
watch.
versus now.
It might be tough to watch. And maybe it's exciting. Maybe Askarov comes in and wins about 8 in a row, and you never know what can happen, right? Then next year happens. I don't know if they would keep Lankinen or sign another veteran, but you would need a veteran to go alongside of Askarov.
Yeah.
Every time that veteran plays and doesn't play well, what are the fans going to say? Get Askarov in there. He's the kid. He's ready to go. What if Askarov struggles? I just think it's very early to give Askarov the reins. I would be very mindful of that if I'm Barry Trotz. That if you're going to – I just don't think he's at the stage of his career where you turn the reins over. And you can look at other goalies that happened with. I think if you look at Tampa, they had a guy like Ben Bishop when Andrei Vasilevsky was that age. Spencer Knight has gone through kind of a crash and burn with the Florida Panthers. He hasn't played a single game in the NHL, and he's signed to a $3.3 million contract for the next couple of years. He's in the minors right now because it was too much too soon for him. He's about the same age as Askarov. Carter Hart for a lot of different reasons, but even before the scandal that took place when he was a junior, that's now coming to fruition, the charges against him, he had a lot of ups and downs when he was sort of given the reins when he was 20 or 21. So I just think it's early for Askarov. I still think that there is a scenario where you could play Saros for a foreseeable future with Askarov for the next couple of years as the backup. That's the next stage of Askarov's development to me, to become the backup and play. And you would play him more than they played Lankinen right now. They need to drop back of Saros' workload. But I can see a great goaltender tandem like Rinne and Saros. So I think that's a move that you can make. And for that reason, I'm not dropping the price of what I'm asking for Saros.
I just don't think the Preds are going to do that. That feels like an irresponsible allocation of assets to have two incredibly valuable goaltenders when you're still struggling to find goal scorers.
Well, they did it with.
But Askarov has played 2 games.
Exactly, and
with
they
Saros
did it
and
with
Rinne. So what's irresponsible about that?
But I think the difference was UC Saros was not as the same kind of prospect as Yaroslav Askarov.
But when he played, he was lights out.
And Pekka was older than UC Saros is now. You were looking toward the end of Pekka Rinne's career, and UC Saros was going to be, the next goalie incumbent when Pekka Rinne was ready to hang it up.
But I think
Saros is still young.
I think this sport is
so is Askarov.
Askarov is young too, but I think this sport
But I'm
is
saying Pekka
different.
was older. UC Saros is still young. UC Saros still has a lot of years left in his career, whereas Pekka Rinne did not.
But this
yes, he
sport,
did. Pekka Rinne was there together with Saros for about 6 years. If you take a look,
and they played, and they were on that. And what are you saying, Willie? They were in the same lineup for 6 years, or
Saros backed up. Let's
backed
take a
up,
look.
okay.
But Saros backed up for about 3 full years, and then there was another couple years where Saros started to dig into Rinne's playing time. That's when Rinne started to age a little bit. But there were about 3 seasons there where Rinne was one of the best in the game, and Saros was one of the best young backups in the game. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. It ended up being a tremendous weapon for the Predators to have 2 really, really good goalies that when you don't play your starter, you feel really good about your chances of winning. And I think that same thing could happen here. And I think the key is to not give Askarov too much too soon. We don't know if he's ready to even be a backup yet. He looks like he is. But I think if you talk to a lot of people, there's so many different tracks. Like I think people would have said Spencer Knight was a knockout, hands down great goalie. He got the gold medal for Team USA in the juniors when he was 20. He comes up, he wins right away for Florida. Everything looked great. He ends up in the player assistance program, and now, like I said, Florida will not bring him up into the lineup. He is playing in the minor leagues trying to get his life and his game back in order. He hasn't played real well. So there's just a lot of paths it can take. Askarov is still an unknown. I'd still like to see him in an apprenticeship for a year or two while you sort all this stuff out. And again, keeping Saros there. And that doesn't mean if you blow me away with a offer for Saros, okay, but you have to blow me away. I'm not dropping the price.
This is where I think it becomes really difficult, because blowing me away, I totally understand that. There's no precedent, at least that I am aware of, that I think a club would come up with a trade package that would truly blow Barry Trotz away, because there's not really anything to compare it to. That, for example, looking at it in the NFL.
Then you have your answer.
So
then
why trade him?
Keep UC Saros.
Yeah, why trade him? If
to get assets for him.
No, but getting assets and getting assets that are going to be high contributing members of your team is different from getting just assets.
Well, of course
I can get an asset for him.
You are not going to trade Saros just to get a backup.
But you're answering your question already. They're not going to trade Saros just for a bag of nickels.
Yes, that would be stupid.
They want something in return, something that is valuable in return. And if no one's willing to give that up, then why make a move on them?
Well, if you're going to get a bag of nickels in return, then you're not going to do it. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case.
But you're not going to lower your price just because you have this young phenom that in a couple of years he may be ready. Hell, he may be ready tomorrow. We don't know. But I'm not. If I'm asking,
Barry Trotz knows.
But Barry Trotz knows. But I'm not. If Barry Trotz knows that, okay, this young kid is ready. Let's just say he's not ready right now. You are, and I want $20. Let's just say $20. I'm not going to lower my $20 just because I believe that he will be ready in the next 2 years.
What's the alternative?
You keep them both.
Yeah,
What's wrong with that?
I think that is irresponsible.
How is it irresponsible?
Because you don't have players that can score goals.
Why? But Caroline, what's irresponsible about this? Let me paint another scenario here. They go into next year. Let's just say Saros is extended for a new contract. I don't know how long, but let's just say in the neighborhood of $8 million a year. You still have Askarov on his entry-level contract at $925. So your budget is not blown away at all. And then let's say Askarov does a good job, takes the next step, and is a very dynamic backup that you still say this guy has a great ceiling. I would say then, what's wrong with then maybe you could get more for Askarov at that point, right? Maybe that leads you to the elite center that you're coveting, right? I think that might be a pathway to, if you're saying utilize the assets, but you have time to make this move. Nobody's going to give you the number one center off of a contending team right now, I don't think, right? Not an established guy. Mm-hmm. And nobody's going to give you an established center for Askarov right now. But you might get a guy on the verge of stardom for another guy on the verge of stardom. See what I'm saying? But Askarov hasn't done it yet. You have time to lay this out. It's not blowing away your salary cap. You have the resources to do this. It all comes down to this. Do you believe in UC Saros in the long term? And are you willing to invest in him? I am. I think he's got the makeup. He's a winner. He's going to keep himself in shape. He's got his life together off the ice. And so I think he's a good long-term investment. And so I'm willing to hold on to that unless you blow me away. I still don't know. I still don't know about Askarov yet. I think we have to be careful. He's lighting it up. I get it. But Spencer Knight did. Carter Hart did. There's a lot of goalies that look great and are very talented, but goaltending is so tough mentally. It's so hard to go from being a dominant minor leaguer to a dominant NHLer, and there's a lot of different roads that people take. So it's not a sure thing.
Totally, it's not. But there's one person that would know if he's ready, and that's Barry Trotz. And Barry Trotz could look at what Askarov is doing and say, look, there's going to be some tough days ahead. You're going to have to learn on the fly, and that's not always going to be easy, and that's not always going to be pretty. But if Barry Trotz feels that he is ready, I don't know how smart it is to hold on to two goaltenders that could bring back a big return. And whether that return is...
show me the big return.
Yeah, we don't know what big return is going to be.
When you say could give me a big return, they haven't obviously gotten the call.
Nobody has offered that
yet.
big return.
I'm aware of
Not
that.
big enough.
But also, I don't think that Barry Trotz, or I don't think that this would be reported that Saros is 50-50 to staying in Tennessee if there were no offers out there at all that even piqued an interest.
But it's not
All I'm saying
blockbuster enough for us to make the trade.
I'm saying I think that it would be irresponsible for the Predators to hold on to both Askarov and Saros and have them both in Nashville at the same time. If you don't get a trade package, a deal that's even closely to be attractive to you for UC Saros, then you don't do it.
So what do you
If
ask for?
Yaroslav
What do you ask for?
Yaroslav Askarov is not ready, then he's not ready, and you keep him in Milwaukee. But Barry Trotz would know if he is ready or not.
What do you ask for in return for UC Saros?
If I'm Barry Trotz,
Yeah.
I would need offense. I would need goal scorers. I don't think that's going to come in the form of an elite center. No, not one. I don't think that's going to come in the form of an elite center. Like, I don't think that you're getting Austin Matthews in return for UC Saros, but I would want pieces in return that I can continue to build my team. That's what my perspective is. If you trade UC Saros and you have Kevin Lankin and Yaroslav Askarov in over the next couple of weeks and months, and it doesn't look very pretty and you don't make the playoffs, I can live with that if I understand that the haul that I got in return for UC Saros helps build my team for the next 5 years.
Obviously they haven't. No
and
one's
if you
offered
don't get that. If you don't get that, then you don't get that.
Well, obviously nobody's offered that, not that we know of, because
And there's still
Saros
time.
is still. I mean, UC is still here, and obviously, yeah, we still have a couple of weeks here. But at this point, no one has offered up that type of package for Barry to say, "Hey, listen, okay, let's make the deal."
And if you don't get it, you don't get it. And you don't trade him. And Saros is a really good player, and you get a great goaltender.
But if you don't trade
then
him, that doesn't mean you're being irresponsible, because now you have those two guys potentially on your roster moving into next season.
I'm saying if
Okay,
your long-term plan is both of them, I do not agree with that, because you still don't have players that can score goals consistently.
Let's go back to the Rene Saros tandem. 2016-17. Saros was 21 years old, same age as Askarov is this year. So this would, in theory, this would be what you would do next year. Saros had a .923 save percentage and a .235 goals against average. He started 19 games. Pekka Rinne took the team to the Stanley Cup final. I think that tandem worked pretty well. The next year they won the President's Trophy. Saros started 23 games, so 4 more. .925 save percentage, .245 goals against average. The following year, 2018-19, he started 27 games. He had 17 wins, .262 goals against average, .915. Again, Pekka's backup. Rinne was still obviously really good, and they won the Central Division. They lost in the first round of the playoffs, but during the regular season, that team. So 3 full years of Saros being the backup. He started more games each year. It took us a little bit of the burden off of Rinne as he aged, and they had one of the best, maybe the best, goaltender combination in the league for 3 years. Then in 2019-2020, the year that Laviolette got fired, that's when we started to see the transition of Saros, who's still at that time only 24, start to take more and more games from Rinne. And when they went to the bubble and played in the playoffs, they actually went with Saros in that series. And then Saros really became the starter from there on at age 25. To me, that's a great curve that you could use for Askarov. I feel like you could use that as Saros ages and Askarov matures. I think that can work. It worked with Saros and Rinne. So why can't it work with Askarov and Saros?
I think that would work because you have 2 great goaltenders. How could that not work? But the difference is UC Saros was a 4th-round pick. Yaroslav
So what?
Askarov was the 11th overall pick.
Pekka Rinne was the 7th-round pick.
Yes, but I'm saying in terms of Saros and Askarov, that Saros was kind of the incumbent, was kind of the apprentice to Pekka Rinne, and he felt like you could do that because you had a 4th-round pick asset tied up in UC Saros. Yaroslav Askarov is different. You have an elite goaltender in UC Saros and a 1st-round pick. That's a lot of assets tied up in one position.
Askarov
That's
is
like
more of an
having
elite
2
prospect.
1st-round quarterbacks on your roster. That doesn't make much sense.
But this is different.
that doesn't
Quarterback
mean
and goalie is
Askarov
totally
doesn't
two different situations. Quarterbacks, we know you can't allow. Like, listen, if a quarterback is making his first start at 28, 27, 29, somewhere around there, that's probably not good. And more than likely, you don't have your guy. Because if it took him that long to sort of come up because he don't have a minor league or anything like that, so you didn't see him play, if it takes him that long, typically teams are moving away or they're trading him away or they're making him a permanent backup unless something happens to the starting quarterback. In this situation, because they have a minor league, you can allow that growth to happen the way it's supposed to. Bring him in when you feel he's ready. Allow him to play unless he's just lights out. Allow him to play underneath a goalie that is damn good. And then when that time comes, you make the switch. But I don't know why you would have to rush into making the switch. You don't. You have potentially 2 really good goalies. We know what Saros is. We think we know what Askarov is. Well, we know what he is in Milwaukee. We don't know what he is. The last time he was in, an NHL, it didn't look great. It really didn't. So
I don't think we could expect it to look great when it's his first start.
Absolutely. So you bring it along as slow as you need to. That's all I'm saying. You just don't throw we got to get this young guy in, so let's trade away Saros and just give us somebody that can score goals. Give us somebody that can score goals, and we'll give them to you because we believe in this young guy. The young guy comes in. If he ain't stopping nobody, you better be scoring about 7 or 8 goals a game. Because if he ain't stopping nobody, that's what you're going to have to do.
It's like
how many starting goalies are there in the NHL that are 21 or 22? It is rare. And I will show you when they do that they usually have some inconsistencies.
And he doesn't need to be the starter right away.
Okay, so who starts?
Kevin Lankinen. You bring in another veteran.
Okay, and how do you think that will look compared to what we're used to in Nashville, seeing elite goalies year after year after year for decades?
And what if you get an elite goal scorer in return for UC Saros? And that player develops into your center of the future. I think that's going to be a lot different than what we're used to seeing in Nashville, and I think it's going to be in a good way.
Well, we'll see. You got to tell me who that guy is.
And we will continue the conversation coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get into the conversation on this. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game.
If you set out to lose weight in 2024, chances are it may not be your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. People at Cool Springs MD, they understand the frustration of this cycle. That's why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, counseling, and more. Dr. Lodge and his team don't believe in fad diets or generic plans. Instead, they offer a personalized program designed to help you achieve your goals faster and easier. Now is the time to break free from the cycle of failed resolutions. Trust an experienced doctor in weight management to help you reach your goals. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and Cool Springs MD. Call now, 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458. Or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com. Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
how much of the phone calls, maybe a percentage, what percentage of the phone calls you're taking right now or making have to do with the goalie, and how much of it has to do with other parts of the roster?
Percentage, I would probably other parts of the roster is probably 90%.
Which would leave 10% for Saros?
Yeah, that's probably as accurate as I can be with you right now.
Welcome.
There was Predator General Manager Barry Trotz on with Stillman & Company earlier this week. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase were brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. We'll catch up with Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet 32 Thoughts podcast, NHL Insider. He will join us at 1 p.m. He had some interesting tidbits in his most recent 32 Thoughts article. Says people who know better than I do, speaking on behalf of Elliot, it said it's closer to 50-50 that UC Saros is going to stay in Tennessee. So we've been having this discussion of, what do? You have a hot young goaltender and Yaroslav Askarov in Milwaukee. You have UC Saros that could be potentially on the trade market. We'll get into your thoughts unless we have some thoughts.
Let's go to the phones.
Let's get into the phones. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you have a thought. Jeff is on the line with a thought on UC Saros and Pekka Rinne. What's up, Jeff?
Hey, guys. How you doing today?
Good.
So, listen, I don't think anybody's talking about is how close are we realistically to this team being a legitimate contender again? How many years would you say? Basically,
there are ways.
What? Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
There are ways. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, right. So, Saros is 28, 29. So what we're not talking about is by the time that this team is legitimately ready to contend, Saros is going to be on the tail end of his prime. And by not trading him, you are in the draft. You drafted Askarov at 11. Guys you passed on are Anton Lundell, Seth Jarvis, Lucas Reichel, Dawson Mercer. All of those guys are now in the NHL. Dawson Mercer and Seth Jarvis specifically are legitimate 1-2 centers. By not trading Saros, you're going to have to resign him to what's he looking for, $8 million a year, say $7 million a year. And then you have Askarov, who it's not going to work by having this can't be Pekka and Saros. Caroline, you absolutely nailed it by saying that you didn't waste. You used the 11th pick in the draft on Askarov, where you use the fourth round pick on Saros. The two can't exist in the same city. They just can't. It's just you need scoring. You have to get scoring. There's the young guys have regressed. You have Tomasino back in Milwaukee. You have Parson back in Milwaukee, and I understand these guys can take time to develop, but what we're seeing on the ice is not consistent with guys who are going to be top 6 players.
Thank you for your call.
Thanks, Jeff.
Listen, again, let's take the label of 4th round and 1st round 11th overall pick.
But I do think it's relevant.
It's relevant when I could see if Saros wasn't playing, if he wasn't one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League. Then the 4th, we can bring up the 4th round stuff, but he is. So, and he's been in the league long enough that we can move away from the 4th round.
Totally, but I think I'm more so looking at it through the frame of the Rinne Saros duo of when Saros was the young gun that was in the incumbent to take over Pekka Rinne's job.
But like Willie said, Pekka was a 7th round pick, so under that premise,
Pekka was one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. How we look at UC Saros,
exactly. But under that premise, they should have been trying to push Saros in front of Pekka because Pekka was the 7th and Saros was the 4th. It doesn't. They're so far along in their careers that we got to let that part go. I understand that Askarov is the 11th overall pick, but just because he's the 11th overall pick, if he's not ready, people, he's not ready.
And if he's not ready, he's not ready.
And then if
Barry Trotz knows if he is or
but
not.
if you bring him up, which I'm sure they will bring him up sometime either later this year, depending on how the season continues to go, or next year. I would figure more of next year that they bring him up. They bring him up and you trade and you trade away for UC Saros. For who? I don't know. Let's just say a scorer. We don't know who that scorer is, but he's a scorer, a top flight, not even a top flight scorer, but a guy that's going to get you some goals.
Some offense.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So you do that. and then the kid's not ready, what happens then?
You're going to take another step back.
Exactly. You're going to continue to take these steps back. My thing is, until you can do both things at the same time, I think we're approaching this as if the Predators, if we trust what Barry Trotz is doing, which we do, and then we also got to remember this. You know, Jeff said, well, these young guys, you know, they're regressing. They're playing in a new system. If you haven't played sports, hockey, football, when you're playing in a new system as a young guy, there's going to be some regression. And then the next season you hope, or as the season goes on, you hope these guys start picking up what you're teaching them. So when you go into the next season, everybody's ready to roll. I understand. So these young guys that Jeff says regressing, they may end up being the guys that you need. They may end up being the guys that you thought they would be. Why? Because now they have a full season in this system. Now they come back knowing what to expect from the coach. Coach knows what to expect from them, and they come back a better player. We got to look at it from that standpoint, and I don't think we are at times. Like, this whole year is new for everybody, especially these young guys trying to find their footing. We saw some of these young guys play really well last year toward the latter part of the season. And then you come back this season and some of them have struggled. Well, allow them to have a full year in this system because, again, this isn't the year. Willie said there's some years away from, you know, really contending for a cup.
Yeah.
Or if that's the case, then
I said there are ways.
Exactly.
Look, they have now, according to The Athletic, right? They still haven't been revealed in the farm system rankings, but they are no lower than 8th, right? They're in the top 8. So what's going on in Milwaukee, and Askarov is a part of that, is really encouraging in the how do you get back up? How do you get back to contend? I don't think you're at a point. Like, you're in the middle, right? And it's frustrating. But I'm telling you, we still haven't felt the frustration of a true tank where you're like, okay, how do you build a Stanley Cup contender? You stink for a long, long time. I don't think you want that, right? Chicago's a long, long way from even making it back to the playoffs, let alone contending for a cup. And they have already put in about 5 or 6 years of being irrelevant already. And I don't know how many more they've got before they're relevant again. So the question is, how do you get back up there? Two quick points. Barry Trotz told Jared, also in that interview, that he was asking, Jared, I think, asked a good question. What's the next thing for Askarov? He's dominating in the AHL. And Barry Trotz said he probably needs some games behind Saros in Milwaukee. In Nashville in the NHL. I thought that was interesting because that kind of projected a scenario where it's a tandem of Saros and Askarov, right? And but I thought that was a noteworthy answer. And also, too, Saros was not a first-round pick, and he was not a huge prospect because obvious reasons. He's 5'11", and he's not the prototypical high prospect goalie. But when he got to Milwaukee, he dominated as much as Askarov is dominating right now. You know what his record was in Milwaukee?
I don't.
35-15. And
Pretty
his
good.
goals, his save percentage, .920, .934 in his 2 seasons there. Well, and part of it was he was yo-yoing up and down between Milwaukee and Nashville getting games. So I really think that track, the next step in development, if you're being responsible with a great asset like Askarov, take all the trade stuff aside, the next step would be to be the backup for a couple of years. I don't know if it's 3 full years. He may prove he's ready quicker. But at the age he is, he could use a lot of seasoning as the backup goaltender, and he would not stunt his growth at all.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the right move. And, of course, Barry Trotz said that, too. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily have to be behind Saros if you feel like there is more potential to get back in your goalie room if you have Saros and Askarov. If you feel like Askarov just needs some time, needs to be in one night, out a couple nights, in one night, who's saying he can't do that behind someone else? But I do want to get back into this
That's
conversation.
you could do that. You could do that. No question.
We still got
So again, you got to give me top dollar for Saros though.
We still got a bunch of thoughts on this. We'll get right back into your phones. But we brought up Lankinen. What about Lankinen as a potential trade piece? Could you get anything in return for him? What is his value? We'll continue this coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Okay, time to tell you once again about F&M Bank. You hear me talking about them a lot lately. I'm really, really excited. Whatever your banking needs are, F&M is ready to serve you with their 20 convenient locations across Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. We all have different financial goals these days, and whatever they are, F&M Bank wants to make your banking needs easier on purpose. That's the way to go. Simplified checking, a new savings account, maybe a business-to-business loan. So whatever those needs are at F&M Bank, it's a full-service community bank right there in the middle of your community. They want to make your community better and your life better. Visit online at myfmbank.com and check out all of the locations. Find the one that's nearest to you. It's called Banking Made Easy on Purpose. F&M Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are talking goalies. We're talking Predators trade deadline. What's the best move for the Predators moving forward? You've got UC Saros, and as Elliot Friedman reported on the article 32 Thoughts, that from people that he's been talking to, it's about 50-50 that UC Saros stays in Tennessee and UC Saros is no longer in Nashville. But I want to get your thoughts on that. Doug is on the line and has been waiting very patiently. What's up, Doug?
Hey, I appreciate you taking the call. In a perfect world, it'd be nice to have the Pekka Soros development plan. What I don't think we talked about was where Pekka was at with his contract and how that could work out in a good way. Right now, what's the value for Soros this year versus next year? And if you have to re-sign him, how long do you have Askarov play behind an $8 million goalkeeper? Just some thoughts. And one last thing for me, D-Mase is the new Floyd Reese for me. All the good insight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your call,
I
Doug.
could never fill those shoes, not even try to. But thank you. I do appreciate it. That's, one, it's humbling, but thank you. But I could never, the knowledge I have is nowhere near the knowledge Floyd had. So, but I do appreciate it. Yeah, that is a question. The whole contract situation. You know,
it's a good question because you can't have too much money tied up in two goaltenders.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how it worked with Rene and Saros. Rene was signed to a 7-year, $7 million per year contract, which at the time was very, very high for a goalie, but obviously he was worth it. And then even signed another contract for 2 more years after that expired. So Rene was making about $7 million a year when Saros was coming into the league. And Saros was obviously early on making the league minimum, the entry-level contract. I'm going to see what Saros made in his previous contract before the one he's got now. So remember, Saros, if you were to keep him and sign him to an extension, you would still have him play at $5 million next year. So next year, Saros and Askarov would still cost you less than $6 million. That's one of the best deals you could have, I think, for bang for your buck. Then after that, in theory, Saros's contract would go up, and then you'd have to sign Askarov to the next contract. He makes $924,000 right now, and so that would be the key: is to sign what you would probably label some form of a bridge deal, right? Where you get Askarov for, I don't know, in the neighborhood of, you give him a raise, maybe between $1 and $2 million, depending on how he would play next year, right? And have him, the key would be how many years could you pull that off? 2 years, 3 years? But I think that's what you would try to do, is have those two goalies not cost you more than, let's just say, the neighborhood of $10 million. That if you budget for two goalies, if you're saying, okay, we're going to have arguably, what could potentially be the best goaltender tandem, or one of the best goaltender tandems, is $10 million worth it with the salary cap going up? And down the road, obviously, you're going to be past the Duchesne buyout and all of that stuff. Then I think budgetarily you could make that work, in theory.
And I think that the contract's important to bring up as well, because I don't think Saros is going into next year without an extension. At least if I were Saros, I would not want to play on the final year of my deal without an extension. And the second thing is, if you do sign Saros to an extension, then your trade value goes down, because he is going to be a more expensive goaltender.
For Saros, it goes down. But for Askarov, it might go up.
If that's what you wanted to do. If you decided that, hey, we think Saros is going to be our future and we're more than willing to move on from Askarov, I don't know if they're there, though.
Right, but so that would be up to Askarov to take the next steps forward, because it's not going to happen overnight. But if the end game is to become a contender, right? So whichever one gets you the pieces that help you become a contender, I could make the argument either one. I still think Saros will be a really good goalie well into his 30s. So otherwise, I don't think you would think about signing him to an extension.
Steve is on the
That's
line.
a key question.
Oops, sorry, Willie. Steve is on the line with a thought on the new players. What's up, Steve?
Yeah, that and Soros. I mean, to me, I've been going to the games now for over 10 years, and Soros is having a down year. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if he was having the same year that he's had in the past, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. But I mean, he's going to come back. He's having a down year. I don't know what the problem is, but he's gonna come back and be the goalie he's been in the past. And about the new players, the guys that came from Milwaukee, they came in because we traded people like Janot and Ekholm and other players at the trade deadline. And then, too, we had some injuries. And those new guys from Milwaukee came in, and they were playing extremely hard, in my opinion, to prove they could, go to the next level. What's your thoughts on that, Willie?
Yeah, thanks for your call, Steve.
I still think that's really going to be the most important thing. And by the way, let me just add, I just found that bridge deal that Soros signed. So he was playing at $925 for the 3 years that he was the backup. And then the following 3 years, as he sort of transitioned, he was at 1.5 for three different seasons. So I don't know what that's going to translate for Askarov, but that would be the approach if you did the tandem of the two. But he was asking about the guys from Milwaukee. That really is a great question that you can't answer. Is do you have a couple elite players in this large group that's dominating in the AHL? Like, Zach LaRue, first-round pick. Fedor Svechkov, who's injured. He's going to be out about a month, we think, which is unfortunate because he's looking really good. Kemmel, another guy. So what do those guys turn into, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking about goal scoring. Caroline, those are three forwards, right, that could help down the road. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I think it's pretty sure those guys are going to be NHL players, but at what level?
Right, and as we talked about with the Preds with the draft this past year, look, you knew that you weren't going to hit on every single draft pick, but you'd hope that, hey, more draft picks, the higher the likelihood that at least one is going to work out and be a future foundation of your team moving forward. That's how I feel about the young prospects as well. The more you got, the more you hope, hey, one's going to work out.
Yeah.
We do have to go, but since I love him so much, we'll get him in. Adam in Portland's on the line. What's up, Adam? Quickly.
Hey, so I'm just curious though. Like, I love Soros. I think he's awesome. But if you have a year where you're like on the fence, you have to weigh everything. Like, do you put it up? Like, what could we get for Askarov? What could we get for Soros? And then, what does it look like if we were to give? If we bring the kid up and let him play, what's that look like for the fan base? I feel like the fans would be come way harder than they've been coming, honestly, because he's exciting, and I've been looking forward to seeing him every night. And like the couple of samples we've gotten, I think it's been a really good fan response. So I don't know. I don't think it's a knock on Soros. I think if you're weighing everything, I think the kid makes more sense for me.
Yeah, thanks for your call, Adam. Any thoughts on that?
Nah,
I think the point by the last caller was good when he said, would we be having this discussion if Soros was having a Soros year? That's a really good question. And then here's the other thing. This is, to me, the key point of the hour. I'm open to all avenues that if I'm the GM, that get me to contending team in a couple of years, right? That's the pathway. I got to keep my eye on that. But you asked the question, do I drop the price for Soros? That's how we started this conversation, right? Absolutely not. So that's the key, because I don't have to trade him. I'm at the car dealership, and I have a really good car. I don't have. If you can give me a better car for a better deal, I'm taking it. But otherwise, I'm keeping my car. That's a pretty good position. Rather than what I did a couple months ago, I came into a car dealership without a car. I had to get a car, so I didn't get a great deal. I was bummed out about that.
And you don't have to do anything right now. If there's nothing that blows you away, then you don't trade him. Like,
right.
You don't trade him just for some,
But
jabroni
so don't
down
drop
the street.
The price. Stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. Don't drop the price.
But it does create more questions that you're going to have to answer of what's the future of these two star goaltenders, one star and one potentially star goaltender. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Elliot Friedman will join us in 1 hour, so we'll get back into this conversation with Elliot Friedman at 1 p.m. But coming up next, there's this narrative as far as the Titans were concerned that, frankly, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know it was a question. But apparently it's been a conversation, and we will address it coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. D-Mase and myself are broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Willy Donick joins us from LA because the Predators take on the Kings tonight. ESPN game tonight, correct, Willy?
Say that again, Caroline. Sorry.
An ESPN Plus game for the Preds?
ESPN Plus tonight, yes. Let's hope it goes better than the last ESPN Plus game. That was last Thursday.
Yikes.
That didn't go so well.
The game that shall not be named.
The last the last time they were in LA, it was also on ESPN Plus, and they won. So hopefully let's go with that mojo. In fact, just a quick programming note for our radio coverage tonight. Since D-Mase and I aren't doing the television broadcast. We are going to aid Max Hurst and Hal Gill on the radio call. I know Chase is doing what Max does normally, with Max filling in for Pete. And so there's some extended hockey coverage we're going to be talking about. I'll be in L.A. with Chase back at the studio. And then we're going to do a little mix and match during the broadcast tonight. So if you want a little unique broadcast, we're going to have like a 3-man booth. It'll be a rotating. So sometimes you'll get Max, Mace, and Hal. Sometimes it'll be me. It'll be Max, me, and Hal. So it'll be a little potpourri, if you will. But it's going to be fun.
Awesome. That's going to be.
If you want to stay up late and enjoy the broadcast and maybe sync it up with the TV, you can do that.
Don't say we. Whatever you do, don't say
Don't
we.
say we.
Or else Joe
I have to talk to.
Joe gonna get mad.
Joe's gonna get mad at you. You're gonna be on his list. You and Max Hers, the Homer broadcasters that say we.
Just for the record, I subscribe to that. You do not say we.
Do you really?
What?
I don't think you should.
I don't like.
I try to avoid it. If one drops in every now and then when you're referring to yourself, like we traveled from L.A. to Vegas, or we traveled from L.A., that's one thing. But I don't think you should be in a full habit of saying our guys and we got to get this and we got.
I mean, every once in a while, it'll come out.
If you drop one in, it's okay. I think I'm not a stickler, but I just don't think it's. Look, let me just say this. I've been doing this long enough. I know that if you say we a lot, you automatically get labeled a homer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And when you get labeled a homer, the perception is you're not calling it like it is. And I think you try to avoid that, even though you're clearly more enthusiastic for the team you're broadcasting for. Just broadcasting philosophy right there.
That is going to be the 6 o'clock topic tomorrow morning. Robbie and Rex Road.
Oh, hey, listen, if those guys are listening, I would be glad to come on and talk about that philosophy if they thought it was worthy. But
Joe, Robbie, if you're out there, Willy's available. Maybe not in the 6 o'clock hour while you're in LA, Willy. Nice 3 a.m. wake-up call. Yeah. All right, so enjoy the broadcast tonight, Willy. I'll be tuning in. I'm excited to hear this kind of shake-up of a broadcast on our airwaves.
Hopefully you'll stay awake, Caroline. Hopefully you won't doze off in the first period.
I'll tell you, Willy, there's no guarantee, but I did get a nice, shiny new espresso machine, so I might have to fire that up later tonight.
Oh, yes,
to
I
keep
forgot about
myself
that.
awake.
And you're also excited that LSU got the buzzer beater last night against Kentucky. That was fun.
We're basketball school.
Yes.
You heard it here first. Basketball school, men's and women's.
By the way,
I
what
haven't been in basketball school since Shaq left, okay?
We are now. We are now. We beat 2 top 20 teams in the last week. Actually, I saw this this morning.
I give y'all that.
The first team in the history of college basketball to beat 2 top 20 teams back-to-back by 1 point.
Oh, wow. The script is working. The script
that
is
was
working.
a great March Madness teaser. It's like, oh, that's what I love about March Madness, because Kentucky hit an awesome shot to go ahead right before the buzzer beater. I don't know how many people saw. I happened to be watching while it was going on.
It was crazy.
Just a chaotic last play, too. Kentucky blocks the first shot. If LSU does not call timeout, right? After Kentucky hits a dead-eye shot.
Like, what do you do? Call timeout.
Oh, I'm sure. I was thinking the same thing. Ooh, they got the guts. They're going right at them. And sure enough, they don't call timeout. Guy drives to the basket, block shot, and it looks like, this is over. And then the guy kind of just throws it back up randomly, right? But it ended up being like a perfect alley-oop pass unintentionally for the tip-in with, 0.3 of a second left as it's going through. That was something.
All the stars aligned. And then Cal got to his post-game press conference and said, look, I'm going to keep it short because we've got an early game on Saturday. We got a 4 p.m. tip. Got to get back to Lexington. I was like, don't cry, baby. You don't have an early game on Saturday.
When he said early game, I thought he was going to say, we got an 11 o'clock game.
4 o'clock game.
4 o'clock
also,
game.
it was Wednesday. You have to get back and catch up on your Z's before Saturday.
Damn.
These guys don't think straight, I don't think, after you lose a game like that. Coaches just go mad. They go mad.
Wasn't it Jordan Wright, by the way, that had that pass?
Jordan Wright had the pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a pass, or was it just kind of
an attempt?
Throwing it up.
We're going to call it a pass.
A lob, perhaps?
Yeah, we're going to call it a pass.
Yeah.
Perfect pass.
It wasn't going to the basket. What was he doing? But it worked.
It worked. Hey,
That's
I'll
how they
take
drew it up, Willie. That's how they drew it up.
Welcome
you know.
to life as an LSU fan.
I
It
was
pure and
watching with
utter
my
chaos.
crew last night at LA Live. We were at a restaurant. We were eating and watching at the bar, and Hal goes, "You got to defend that better." I was like, "How do you defend that?" He says, "Well, you got to jump higher. You got to want it more." I was like, "You can't. You're not reacting to what he did. He just threw it up. We threw it away from the basket, but it went right to their guy. That was lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good."
But it was an absolute blast. It was such a fun game to watch, and I know a lot of the Big Blue faithful were riding high after that win at Auburn on Saturday night. But yikes! Nothing more.
Bring you back
Sorry,
down to earth.
basketball school.
Yep.
Notoriously a basketball school. I have a question for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you questioned whether or not DeAndre Hopkins will be a Tennessee Titan this season?
A serious question, or like it, man? I wonder if he may not. Depends on how the team is going.
Question at all.
I did when they got a new head coach, even though, because the Tim Kelly, DeAndre Hopkins fit, because Tim Kelly was his offensive coordinator in Houston. So, but there was a minute when I thought once they hired Brian Callahan, I was thinking, not because I don't think he can come back and duplicate the season he had last year, because I think he can, and I think he will, or come close to it, but because he wants to win a championship. And I don't know, realistically, and I know they're not preaching this in that building, but realistically, they're further away from the championship than not. So does he want to play? Because he has one more year left, and he would have to have, a really good season for him to command the money that he could possibly want on the next contract. So to me, I thought, well, maybe he try to get out of this contract, ask for a trade or something just to be released, so he can get to a team where he can have a better shot at winning a Super Bowl, because he's closer to retirement than not. You see what I'm saying? I thought about it from that standpoint, not from the standpoint that he can't play anymore.
Right.
You know.
Willie, how about you?
I think it's I like having him on my team. I think DeAndre Hopkins was overall a positive force, even though he was not a dominant player. But when you have that kind of pro and a young quarterback, I think he was very valuable and worth the money. Now, I will say this, kind of like our discussion in the last hour. If somebody were to approach you this offseason and say, you know what, we're trying to win this year, we need DeAndre Hopkins, we're willing to pay top dollar. I don't know what that would. Let's just say it's a first-round pick, or it's a second and a fourth. That draft capital that we know is valuable. Would I consider it? Yeah, I think I would consider it, right? But they're not going to cut him, right?
Right.
They have plenty of cap space, so it would be, I'm keeping him unless somebody comes and really says, well, here's the other thing. Are you going to make a move for a younger receiver like a T. Higgins? Does that come into focus a little bit more, and you're thinking, I could trade Hopkins, get this, and then use that to go get T. Higgins? I mean, these are the things that would come up in my mind. But right now, I'm like, I like having D-Hop.
I'll tell you this. If somebody was going to offer you a first-round pick for
Yeah,
DeAndre Hopkins, take him.
I wouldn't even think about it twice.
Love you, D-Hop.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay, so how high would it have to go to get your attention? Right?
I don't think
I'd rather have D-Hop than my
a third-round
an extra
pick,
fourth-round pick or something. But if it's a good package, what would that package have to be?
To me, it
get
would
your
be
attention?
at least a third-round pick, because I know realistically you're not going to get a second, you're not going to get a first. You may be pushing it with a third, and it has nothing to do with who Diop is. It's just he's getting older. He doesn't present that vertical threat that teams are looking for. He's a guy that he's just good at what he does, but a team, if they want him, they're not looking for him to – they're looking for him to be that guy that catches those critical passes, those first downs, possibly even in the red zone. And to me, him being he 31 during the season, somewhere around there, I just don't think a team would give up more than a fourth round, honestly.
You're not going to get, I think, what you would need, because you have so little certainty on this team, and you have so few good players, especially offensively, that I would need a Barry Trotz, UC Soros kind of trade haul as something to blow me away in order to give up DeAndre Hopkins. So I frankly didn't even think that this was a narrative, this was even a thing. I just kind of assumed, based off of the way that DeAndre Hopkins' contract is constructed, it's a 2-year deal. If the Titans wanted to move on from him after 1 year, they could have.
Yeah.
If DeAndre Hopkins just frankly wasn't good enough. But I don't know how you could see what D-Hop did for this team last year and say, no, we're good. We're not going to sign up for more of that this upcoming season. So I didn't think that this was even a thought, that of course the Titans were going to bring DeAndre Hopkins back. Because if you don't, then who's playing receiver?
I think it's about them getting younger and faster, at that position. And right now, they are not perceived to be a fast unit.
Because they're not.
Yeah, some guys, I think Traylon Burks has speed. I think Kyle Phillips has speed. What's the other kid? Forget his name, young kid. But I think Colton Dow has some speed to him.
But those guys aren't D-Hop.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is, the perception is they don't have speed when in actuality they do have it, but it hasn't been proven speed. This team, from a perception standpoint, they lack deep speed. They lack game-breaking speed. They have a guy that's going to catch anything in his radius, basically. This may have been his worst season as far as not catching the football with a few of his drops. But they need more than that. They need the radius and the speed. They need a guy that can take a 5 and make it a 55. Yep. Every team doesn't have it, but but they try to identify who that guy is so they can possibly either draft him or give him an opportunity. If he is on your roster, give him an opportunity to be that guy. Because if you got your quarterback or who you think is your quarterback, you want to pair him with that guy, that speedy guy, that physical guy that can get downfield. And maybe if they get a T. Higgins, I'm going to ask you two guys this. Say if they get a T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk, let's just say that, and somebody offered you a 4th-round pick this year's draft, or a 3rd round, because the Titans don't have a 3rd round. Excuse me, Willie, I was about to say we. The Titans don't have a 3rd. Yeah. Even though I played there 8 years. But no. The Titans don't have a 3rd-round pick. If you get Ayuk or Higgins and someone offers you a 3rd-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, would you take it?
Well, I'm just looking at the contract now. He'll be 32. He'll be 32 for the season.
And I'm not saying he can't play at 32 because I knew myself at 32 and I could still go. So I'm not saying D-Hop can't.
And I think, like you've pointed out, D-Mase, I think you've done all of us a really good service because before they signed him, you were laying out his skill set. And you were saying that his skills, right, even though he doesn't have the elite speed, he's not a deep threat, just like you were just saying a second ago. He's got that craftiness. He's got that radius. His skills are going to allow him to play into his 30s. Exactly. Would you agree?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think I would not be surprised if he has the same exact year this coming year at age 32. But he is a little bit of a luxury on the salary cap because his cap hit is a lot higher this year. I think that's maybe why this is coming up a little bit, Caroline, because his contract has got him at 17.9 as the cap hit. Now, the good thing is they've got plenty of space, right? He's a bit of a luxury, but at the same time, you need that security blanket for your young quarterback. So if you're not going to have him, you better have plan B ready to go. And that would be, in my mind, some other certainty like a T. Higgins or an Ayuk or something like that. But that gets a little more complicated. So I think the most likely scenario is he plays another year for where he is, and then you go from there.
I believe so, too. One, because...
But would you even maybe knock that number down and pay it over 2 years or something like that if you wanted to and secure him for next year?
I think you could.
You could think about it, right?
You would have to extend it, make more of it a signing bonus.
Right.
So it helps you, as the contract gets ready to expire. And I'm sure that's probably something that D-Hop, I said B-Hop, excuse me, Brad. I'm sure that's something D-Hop wouldn't be opposed to because I'm getting my money up front.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm taking a pay cut.
And I know where I'm going to be next year.
Exactly. I know where I'm going to be. You're giving me my money up front. An extension for another 2 years. I'll be here next year, but I know definitely after that third year, more than likely I won't. But you've given me a bulk of the money up front. So,
and I think this
do you guys think he fits with Callahan's offense? That's something that this skill set.
I think
that's a good. I hadn't thought about that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were thinking, does Derrick Henry fit in what Callahan wants to do? I think it's maybe not a fit. So if they're moving in a different direction there, we could probably ask the same question: does what Hopkins does well, does that fit with what Callahan wants to do?
I know Callahan wants to throw the football.
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Hopkins is a very good catcher of the football. So I don't know how he wouldn't fit in
But you know what I mean, right?
No,
the system, it is an important question.
Yeah,
right?
you're right. But here's the question.
Who else is going to play receiver?
I mean, they'll figure that out. There'll be enough guys, I think, in free agency. I'm not saying they are the caliber or were the caliber, of D-Hop was and still is at his age. But, I mean, they will find somebody. Vrabel said this last year, and again, I'm a stickler on words because if you just listen to somebody, they'll tell you what you want to hear, and you may have to go back and listen to it to really hear. When he said, we need to play faster, he said the quarterback needs to read his progressions faster, receivers need to get into their routes faster. That's telling. That is telling for a former receiver when the head coach comes out and say they need to get into their routes faster. That's telling me that y'all a little bit too slow.
Was that a message to D-Hop or was that a message?
I think that was the message to the whole unit. I think that was the message to the whole unit. Like because we don't have the foot speed. We got to get into things and we got to read things a lot quicker, and it wasn't happening. Not only did he not see the foot speed, you wasn't reading things as quickly as you needed to. And he said it for the quarterbacks, we need to read things. And he may have just been talking about that particular game, but when coaches say that, they say things like that for a reason. They're not calling anybody out, but they're calling people out.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be better as a quarterback at reading, going through your progressions quick enough. You need to read it and dissect the defense quick. And receivers, y'all need to read that defense quickly and get into your routes quickly because it's a rhythm passing game. And if you throw off the rhythm because you're running too slow or you're getting off the line too slow or you're not reading the defense fast enough, that throws everything off. That has nothing to – it has something to do with foot speed, but then it also has to do with you being able to read and dissect what's going on. So when Vrabel said that, that was telling for a receiver. Like, I'd have went back in my room, be like, man, like, what do I need to do to get into my routes quicker? We would have been, as a coach, a receiver coach, and receivers, we would have been talking about that in the room. Like, how do we get into our routes quicker? How do we read it quicker?
Right. I just think that the last thing that the Titans can do is get rid of good players because they don't have enough of them. I think there is a 110,000% chance that DeAndre Hopkins is wearing a Titans uniform next year just for a couple of reasons. One, because he was incredibly productive last year. You don't have enough receivers. You don't have enough playmakers, and that's what D-Hop is. The second thing is, well, you could say, well, the only reason why he wouldn't be a Titan is if he got a great trade return or a great trade offer. I don't think that's in the cards. I don't think anyone's willing to give up a second or a third round pick for DeAndre Hopkins because nobody was willing to cough up the money for DeAndre Hopkins last year when you didn't even have to give up a pick to get him.
That's a fair point. But he's coming off a good year where he wasn't injured, wasn't suspended, anything like that. He had a good year. He wasn't dominant, but I can see a championship team kind of like the Rams a couple years ago looking at a guy like that and saying, one more guy, let's go for it. So what if I said a second and a fifth, Caroline? Is that enough?
I would take that, but I don't think that's on
to
the
me,
market.
But you never know. It just takes one.
To
right?
me, a fourth, and you don't even have to give a and.
You would take a fourth?
A fourth round pick.
What?
I mean, Yeah,
Who's playing receiver?
Again,
I gotta have a little more than
y'all are
4.
not approaching this the way I am approaching this. Because if they were to do something, it would be after they have established what they have via free agency, whether it's the kid out of Buffalo, Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Whether it's they make a trade for Ayuk, they make a trade and sign with T. Higgins. They may make another trade. Calvin Ridley is out there. He'll be a free agency. What I'm gathering, Jacksonville may not be able to sign him because of the whole structure of their salary cap. So it would be a move made once you've established you have another receiver. We're not trading him.
So you'd be budgeting. You'd be taking that money and allocating it to another one. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's how I'm approaching.
I'd still like to get more than a 4th, though.
Yeah.
I'd still like to get a little more than a 4th.
But you're not gonna. It's gonna be hard pressed for somebody to give you a 3rd. He's 32 years old, and again, 32 doesn't mean he can't play. No, because I played damn good at 32,
you've got.
And he's playing damn good. But I don't think teams out there, unless you are a team like Kansas City, somebody like that, and even Kansas City, I don't think they're giving up a 3rd round pick. I think honestly, let's take the name. We got to take the name away. Take D-Hop away. Just look at the production, the age, and everything else. I don't think many teams, unless you're desperate, are going to offer more than a 4th round pick for him.
I'm not trading.
And that's not that is not like, oh, that's an insult. 4th round picks are good picks in the NFL draft, depending on how many you got.
And I don't think anyone would even cough up a 4th. And that's no disrespect to D-Hop. It's just I just look at what the market for him last season was.
Yeah.
It was New England, and it was the Titans. Kansas City said, look, we can pick you up off the street and give up no picks in return, but we're going to give you $1.5 million. That's our best offer. So I don't think that anyone would be willing to give the 4th round pick. And frankly, he's just too valuable to you.
He's more valuable to you at this point of time right now than
any other team that could trade for him. And any other team that's receiver needy, the Chiefs, for example, they can just find another receiver in free agency. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get into your thoughts on this. Plus, while we're on the topic of trading for receivers, acquiring receivers, free agency draft, so on and so forth, Paul Kuharsky presented his kind of philosophy of how the Titans build this wide receiver room. Wanted to get your thoughts on that, and we'll discuss. Coming up next, Caroline, Willy, D-Mase were brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, Nashville's best deal of the week is Bavarian Beer House, conveniently located at Aubrey Mills Mall. Enjoy beer, food, music, and fun at Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, where it's Oktoberfest every day. Head to thegamenashville.com/deals right now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. We'll chat with Elliot Friedman at the top of the hour. Elliot had some interesting tidbits about the Predators at the trade deadline. He said it is 50-50 from what he's been hearing that UC Saros will be back in Nashville. So we'll chat about that with Elliot Friedman in 30 minutes. But for now, we're talking D-Hop. I didn't even know that this kind of question or narrative even existed of D-Hop not being back with the Titans next year. But that's the Titans' decision. Like, D-Hop, he can't just opt out of his contract next season. I think that was kind of a fear of some Titans fans. But it is up to the Titans if they want DeAndre Hopkins to be back next year. And if I'm the Titans, I want DeAndre Hopkins to be back next year. You are not in the market to get rid of good players. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott is on the line with a thought on DeAndre Hopkins. What's up, Scott?
Yeah, just as I think it makes more sense to entertain offers for Saros in the offseason, I think the best of both worlds with D-Hop would be you keep him, he goes through training camp, you're drafting one or two young receivers, you've got a young room, you want him there teaching and mentoring and being an example for those guys. You've got a young quarterback, he starts the season as his safety net, his comfort zone. And as things progress, if things are, as long as it's not a complete disaster, or, as long as you're not somehow in contention for the division title somehow, I think it makes the most sense to trade him right before the trade deadline. If all we're talking about is getting like a fourth for him now, might as well hang on to him and have him mentor the young guys and help out Levis in his growth, and maybe you get a fifth or sixth, halfway through the season for somebody who's in contention and has one of their top guys get hurt. I think that makes the most sense of all.
Yeah, thanks for your call, Scott. NFL trade deadline is Halloween. So let's keep that in mind. We are 10 months away. I mean, maybe. See how the season goes. Maybe you draft a receiver in the second round that ends up being an absolute freaking stud, and he's the next Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Maybe. I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket, and I'm not going to count on that. DeAndre Hopkins is going to start this season as a Tennessee Titan if the Tennessee Titans want him to. I would find it very hard to believe that with your limited draft assets and the free agency class that we're looking at, that the Titans would be able to adequately address the wide receiver position along with all of the other needs on this team for them to be able to part ways with DeAndre Hopkins at the trade deadline. But again, that's in October. We don't need to have that conversation quite yet.
I think, but I think, like you said, Caroline, right at the start of the conversation, you said you don't want to give away good players, and that is absolutely true. This team needs good players, but I think you're always looking around and saying, how do I build back? It's just like the Predators. I thought that was great. He tied in the conversation of that the Predators are in, right? How do I get back up to where I want to be? And that's amongst the elite in the league. I am where I am now. How do I get back to where we need to be to have a chance to win this thing? And so if a deal comes along, I think you got to be open-minded to it, right? And I think his scenario is possible, right? It's possible. You hold on to him. You see where you are. You got some young receivers. It's coming along the right way, and maybe you can get something for him. You might go the other way too. You might get into the beginning of next year and say, "Man, Hopkins is in great shape. He's fitting really well with the new system, and let's knock this contract around and reshape it so and we'll have D-Hop next year." I mean, you could go that way too if it's better.
Yeah, I think he has to. Because I think more than likely he will be on this roster, when the season starts. And I think he will more than likely spend the 2024-25 season here with the Tennessee Titans. To me, it's because I sort of, he has to accept the possibility of his role changing. And this is where it gets tricky for all number one receivers when they start to get older. Every number one receiver that believes, because in his mind and in his play, he believes he's still that top flight guy. And I wouldn't sit here and argue with him as far as catching the football, because he is. But his role may be diminished this year. It's not going to be back like last year. Last year was a perfect storm for him, because he came into a situation, the receivers were young, sort of unproven. You had a offensive coordinator that was your coordinator in Houston, so he knew you very well as a player, and he knew how to get you involved in the game and how to scheme to get you the football. So you came into this perfect storm, and you got the money or close to it, what you wanted. That was a perfect storm for him last season. This season, it's going to be different. It has to be different. He's going to have, in order for this receiving core to elevate itself, he's going to have to take a lesser role. Can he and will he? I don't know. I don't know if he can or will. But every number one receiver, there is that thought of, when your role is lessened, I'm still that number one guy. In your mind, I'm still that number one guy. But you got to reconcile it with, okay, in order for the team to get better, in order for the group to get better, I may have to divert some of those, targets to somebody else in order for us to elevate as a unit. They didn't elevate as a unit. Why? Because everything was geared around, and it wasn't D-Hop's fault. Everything was geared around D-Hop.
He was the passing
Exactly. But their passing game didn't elevate. They need to divert it now. I'm only telling y'all this because I experienced it. You have to, in order for the whole to rise in that room, I can see if D-Hop was 25, 27 years old, it's a little bit different. If it was D-Hop in Houston, oh yeah, we're throwing him the ball 200 times. Y'all get in where you fit in. But he's not at that space anymore. In order for this whole unit to elevate, then those other guys, you got to find a way to get those other guys involved. He can't be so much of a focal point that you mature as a unit. He may have to take a lesser role in order for this unit to rise. Some receivers can do that. Some receivers, that have been the number one guy for the longest. He's been the number one guy at every spot he's been. Houston, Arizona, and here. He's been the number one guy. But in order for this unit to elevate, he may have to take a lesser role in the passing game.
I think that's a great point. It's a great point. And he got through a whole year as the number one guy in Tennessee because of the issues with Burks and all the other issues, and he became the guy that they leaned on. But that's not ideal. That's not a winning formula at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I agree. Greg's on the line with a thought on the wide receivers. What's up, Greg?
Hey, I was going to ask, and I enjoy watching Mr. Mason when he was returning the punts, and then he became a receiver. I get what he's saying. He elevated his game, but I like Carolina's guy, that guy Neighbors at LSU. And then when you say Mike Evans is a better version of DeAndre Hopkins, go out and sign Mike Evans to a 2-year deal. He's a stud and proven it. I think he's a better player, and he's going to probably go in the Hall of Fame before DeAndre. And I think he's out there. He would be an upgrade. You do that, and then you do Neighbors at LSU, Carolina's guy, and then they got their receivers. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for your call, Greg.
If you give me that, I'm good. But here's the problem.
There you go.
If you want to get Mike Evans for 2 years, you're going to be giving him $35 million per. Because he wants a big bag in Tampa. He does, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get him for 2 years. If he signs a deal, I expect his deal in Tampa to be somewhere around 4 years. And he's going to want close to 30, if not $30 million. And he earned it. He's earned it. Now, will he get it? I don't know. But in between that 25 and 30 is what he's going to be
Tyreek
asking.
Money.
Yeah, he's going to be asking that. Because what did Tim say the other day? He is a touchdown maker. Mm-hmm. However you slice it, dice it, that's why to me, again, his consistency as far as catching the football, yardage, more importantly, touchdowns, they're there. This kid has been averaging like 12 touchdowns over the last 3 or 4 seasons. That's a lot of damn touchdowns. He's just a touchdown maker. That's all he is. So that's a premium you're going to have to pay for if you do get a Mike Evans. And he's not coming for 2 years unless that deal is astronomical.
10 1,000-yard seasons, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's been in the league 10 years.
Yeah. And I think Tampa's going to re-sign Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think Tampa's going to re-sign him. But if they could, like the caller said, if you can get him and Neighbors, yeah, you got your set.
I mean, let the record show Malik Neighbors is, in fact, my guy. If you can get Malik Neighbors and Mike Evans, that would be great. Mm-hmm. But you still have a lot of holes, other holes to address. If you can adequately, right? So yeah, if you can adequately address left tackle, right tackle, center, inside linebacker, edge rusher, corner, safety, long snapper, kicker, backup quarterback. Did I get everything?
Water boy. Let me see.
Cheerleaders,
right?
Equipment.
They got to get everything.
Yeah.
It's just like everybody.
Practice squad players. Like, I'm open for a tryout, coach, if you hear me.
Everyone's available. I'll show up with bells on. If you can get those two, great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can, but that would be great. But I mean, to the caller's point, I mean, you need speed at the receiver position, whether that comes in the form of Mike Evans or a receiver in the draft or another receiver in free agency, whatever form that comes in. Of course, you need to build up that position as well. All right, 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Elliot Friedman in 15 minutes. We'll see if he has any more Saros tea for us. But I did mention what Paul Kuharski's philosophy is in terms of building this wide receiver room. We'll get into what he had to say on Robbie and Joe yesterday. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Clearly, you're giving up a player for Ayuk, so you could have two players for one player. If you could, I think Ayuk's a great player, though I think he's benefited from playing with another very good receiver in Debo, and the Titans don't have a Debo. So I go all the way back to Alvin Harper. You got to be a little bit careful when it was Tampa Bay, I think, that signed Alvin Harper, thinking, well, we're going to get the Cowboys' number 2 receiver, and he's going to be a number 1 receiver for us. And it didn't pan out. So you got to be a little careful with that, taking a guy out of a very successful system who's been the second receiver, though he put up very good numbers, and thinking he's going to be your one. But I just don't think that Titans could do anything where they're giving up picks. They can't make trades where they're giving up picks. They can only make trades where they're gaining picks.
All right, there you go. That was Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com on with Robbie and Rexter at his weekly hit with them on Wednesdays. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, Elliot Friedman in 10 minutes. Maybe some Saros tea. We shall see. Do we agree with that sentiment? That the Titans cannot make a trade in which they give up picks? Make a move in which they give up picks?
Can they? I mean, obviously they can. Would it be wise considering where this team is at and what they need? It probably wouldn't be the best thing in the world because what are you trying to do? You're trying to fill holes, build teams. Yes, you would be getting a really good player in either T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk, but that solves – it's like addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition. You're giving up more than what you're getting. Not necessarily,
in theory.
Yeah, in theory, it's like I'm only getting one back, but I could potentially, like Paul said, if I do my scouting right, I could potentially get 2 guys, one at that position that we do need and one at another position. I can get 2 guys that can potentially be, long-term players in our organization. Do I do that, or do I, bet it all on one guy, pay him that big money, and hope and pray that it worked? Because he is absolutely right about the Alvin Harper and the whole situation with Dallas. Alvin Harper was a number 2. Why? Because they had the playmaker. They had him, and he was the best in the business of catching touchdowns. Irvin was the best at catching touchdowns and making those tough catches. So when you had Irvin on one side and you had Alvin on the other side, who's getting double team and triple team? Michael Irvin. And then that number 2, who's a good player, is going to benefit from that. But just because you're benefited doesn't mean you're a number 1. And then once you leave Tampa, he goes to Tampa, he's nowhere near the player that he was when he was in Dallas. That's what we gotta sort of think about here. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is a good receiver. He had Debo Samuel, who took a lot of the attention. T. Higgins, we know Jamar Chase took a lot of attention, but I believe T. Higgins, he can do it. But you gotta figure in, okay, now that I elevated these guys to number 1, can they do it with the number 1 price tag? We don't know. And we've seen situations where you try to take a number 2 and make them a number 1, and you're still looking for your number 1.
I'm just looking for inefficiencies in the market. I just rewatched the Moneyball movie, which to me isn't really even as good as the Moneyball book, but it's the philosophy of when you're building, you're looking for deals. Like, I'd love to have Brandon Ayuk, but I'm not going to trade a bunch of assets and then pay Brandon Ayuk huge money because I just don't know if he's that good. So I tend to lean towards Paul, but I'm not making it an absolute. So if there's a deal out there and you feel like you're getting huge value, I'm looking for value, bang for my buck. And I'm really gonna have to think long and hard before I give up draft picks because there is nothing more important than building through the draft. You cannot win without some good drafts back to back to back.
And it's a tough one to swallow when you're giving up picks and paying the money, and it's probably going to be a high round pick and a good bit of money. Like San Francisco and Cincinnati are not giving up Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins for a 5th round pick. They're not doing that. But what you do get in return, because I do understand Paul's point and your point too, D-Mase, of look, well, a pick and money, that's two different players. But what you're getting in return that you don't get from maybe a draft pick is certainty.
Yeah, you get that certainty. And
Plug
that
and
guy, yeah, that guy that has been in the league, you know what he's about. He's played in high pressure games, and has come up big. Talking T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, if those are the two guys you're targeting. But if they did it, then great. You just better hope it works. And it has to work at a high volume. It can't be, you bring in T. Higgins or you bring in Brandon Ayuk and they're only giving you, 1,100 yards, if that, maybe 6 touchdowns. People are still going to be a little bit upset because they're still going to, because those are number 2 numbers. Those are still number 2 numbers, and now you're the number 1. So people are going to still be asking, we need a number 1. Yeah, he's good, but we need a true bona fide number 1. That's what you got to be sort of cautious about. But either one of those guys are good for me. But, you should know that, okay, I'm giving up, possibly a first-round pick with T. Higgins, because I'm sure that's what Cincinnati is going to want. That's where they're going to start. And San Fran may start with the first round with Brandon Ayuk.
Right. And I would totally understand if that's the asking price. I wouldn't give that up. If another team in the league is willing to give it up, then, go at it. I wouldn't do a 1 for either of those guys.
No.
But it's
no way.
No.
It's tough. Because my general philosophy usually is, I'm not giving you picks and money. Like it's too many resources.
I'm giving up too much.
But if you view these guys as difference makers, of look, this is a guy that we have to have, I would be willing to do it. Of course, not a first-round pick, but I am not going to say absolutely positively, no way I'm out on Ayuk or T. Higgins or any other potential tag and trade or trade candidate. I'm not going to say absolutely not on, because this team needs playmakers. You don't have enough of them. So I'm not going to say absolutely not to any of them, or potential of any of them. Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts Podcast and Sportsnet, will join us coming up next. He had an interesting tidbit about the Predators at the trade deadline in his most recent article on Sportsnet.com. We will break that down with Elliot Friedman coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. So on Sportsnet, Elliot Friedman broke down his 32 thoughts, and one of those thoughts is when it comes to UC Saros, there was a time it was 99% certain that he would stay in Tennessee. Now, people who know better than I do think it's closer to 50-50. Now, Elliot Friedman joins us now, 32 Thoughts Podcast and Sportsnet. Elliot, always appreciate your time at 1 o'clock on Thursdays. I wanted to address that with you. The tidbit about UC Saros being in Nashville is 50-50. From what you've heard, what has changed and what's the motivating factor for that? Why is it now 50-50 as opposed to maybe 90% a few months ago?
Well, I really thought that after Barry Trotz talked about Saros earlier in the year, I just didn't, he wasn't on my radar at all, Carolyn. He really wasn't. And so I just kind of put it away. And all of a sudden, some rumors and reports started coming out. I didn't really think much about them. And then, just some people started telling me that, you should start paying attention. And, the more calls I made, the more people told me that it's possible. And, I think that I just think that we've talked about this a lot over the past couple of weeks. I think the Predators are looking for offense. I think they are trying to find offense. And I think what they are learning is that Saros may be the piece that is best positioned to get them an offensive player. So, I don't know where this is going to go here. I have to admit, I'm still pretty surprised by it, really surprised by it, just because it's just a reminder, Carolyn, of how fast things can change in life. Because a few months ago, I never would have believed that this would happen.
Yeah.
But, like I said, people who know better than I do say you better be looking into it because there's a possibility it could happen.
Do you think the price has changed? Because the last time we've heard from Barry Trotz about a UC Saros trade, it was, you're going to have to blow my socks off. You're going to have to blow me away. But now that maybe that landscape has changed, that it's now 50-50, UC Saros could be back, UC Saros might not be, do you think the asking price from Barry Trotz has changed?
No, I don't think it has. I still think that he wants to do he wants that target. But I think one thing that's happened is that I think it shows the great respect that Saros has around the league. He's got value. And if you trade for a player like that, you get him for not only this year, a playoff run or a run, but next year too, and you can talk to him about an extension. And sometimes I think you can get more value for a guy when there's term, and there's not a ton of term, but there is term. Like I said, you get 2 tries with him. So I think that increases a player's value. Plus, he's really good. I think he's a really, really talented player. And when you put talented players out there and say it's going to take talent to come back, people know not to fool around. Now, I think people still try to try to get the best possible deal they can and maybe pull the wool over your eyes a bit. But I think Trotz and his team and the Predators are too smart for that. And I think if anything, if he goes, it's going to be for a good player. I'd be surprised, honestly, Carolyn, if Saros got traded, I would be surprised if we would look at the deal and say, oh, I understand.
We'll talk with Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts Podcast. Check it out. Now, Elliot, we had a discussion about UC and what it would take, but then also, Askarov, the young goalie in Milwaukee. One, do you think it's changed because of how Askarov is playing in Milwaukee? He's dominating right now, so that may, give Barry a bit of pause on, what it's going to take to potentially move Saros. And also, if they don't move Saros, how long can they go? Let's just say they don't sign Lincoln and back next year. How long can you go with a UC Saros and Askarov teaming up?
First of all, I think Askarov's arrival. I think Askarov's play this year has absolutely changed the equation. I do think that has happened, Derek. Look, there's nothing else for him to do there. They've won, I think I said, 1 million games in a row the other day. They just cannot lose. And you reach a point where, you say, what are we doing with this guy in the American Hockey League? He has earned his opportunity. And I think Askarov is getting there. By the way, I saw that they're giving out bobbleheads, I guess, next week of him pushing up the net. I think that is hilarious. That is a great idea.
Yeah, the bench pressing of the net. They've got him down. I've already gotten some texts from outside.
I love that idea. I think that is a great idea. But I think Askarov absolutely changes it. I still you have to understand. I understand the DNA of your organization there in Nashville. David Poyle is not the GM anymore, but he's still a presence, and what he built there is a presence. And, he was one of those guys, you go to the AHL, maybe a little bit longer than you need to, but when you come up here, you're ready. And I do think that Barry Trotz is going to put his own stamp on the organization, but I think he kind of thinks like that too. Based on everything that he has done this year, it's time. And I do think that has changed the equation. But look, honestly, Derek, if there's a situation where it's Saros and Askarov, I think that's really good. If you don't trade him and he stays and the two of those guys are together, I would be very happy with that if I was a Predators fan. I mean, there's still a difference, too, between being in the AHL and coming to the NHL and having to deal with that as the number one guy. Even if Saros isn't here next year and Askarov is, you're going to have someone with him who can help him shoulder the load.
And that's the point, before I pass it over to Willie, and that's the point that we were talking about, because we saw the progression with UC with Pecorine, and he played as played as Pecorine's backup for some years until he ultimately took over. That's why I said, so that's why I said, how long? And I didn't mean like a season. How long could they go with those two guys in net? Could it be 2 seasons? Could it be 3? Could it be 4?
I think you could go for as long as you wanted to. Obviously, I mean, the challenge is at some point what you're doing is you're hoping that Askarov becomes a guy. Well, nobody plays like Rene played. Nobody plays 65 games, 70 games anymore. But you are hoping that you can be with that he'll be eventually be the guy who plays 55 games. And at that point in time, if Saros is still really good, then you punt it down the road and you deal with it then. But that's the way we think. That's not the way teams think. I guarantee to you that Trotz is looking at his goaltending puzzle and saying, okay, even if Askarov is here next year, how many games can we reasonably expect out of him? Can we really expect him to be the true number one right away? That's one thing they're asking right now. And if not, what's the ideal package? And maybe the ideal package is Saros stays and Saros plays 55 games and he plays 37. If that happens, I don't think the Predators are going to be upset. But the one thing is that even if the kid is here next year, they're going to have somebody with them that can help him get through his first year. If you ask a lot of goalies who play in the AHL, they will say on some level it is easier to play in the NHL than the AHL because the AHL is a bit more of a scrambly league. The NHL, the teams defend a bit better. Now here, everyone's a little bit of a better shooter. There's obviously more talent. The schedule is a bit more of a grind, but you're used to traveling by plane and not by bus, and a very nice plane. But there are goalies who will tell you in terms of overall play, the NHL actually can be a little bit easier, but that doesn't mean you're ready for the grind of it.
Elliot Friedman is with us as we speak. Milwaukee is leading 2-0 with Askarov in net, early third period, looking for their 18th straight win. So we're seeing the stock rise in real time here, at least for now. But Elliot, I think this is an interesting thing that we kicked around, and our listeners were weighing in heavily on this. I pointed out that Saros backed up Rene for 3 full years, 3 really good years, and I see the point. You're making the point that if somebody were to trade for Saros right now, you get him for guaranteed 2 full playoff runs, right? So that's maybe the advantage of trading for him now, as opposed to in the summer or even if it went into next year. But I guess my point is, if you just laid out a good scenario that Askarov in theory could be the apprentice to Saros for a couple of seasons. So there's really no hurry. You're in a great leverage position if you're Barry Trotz. So you can sit back and be patient and wait for the perfect deal to come along. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Now, the only thing, Willie, that changes this dynamic is, Saros is due an extension next year. Like, his contract is up. So I think, that's the only other thing that changes the equation, because now you have to make a deal with Saros. And, obviously the Predators probably have an idea of what Saros is thinking, and they have to decide if they're comfortable for that. I have talked about this on your show before, that I think that is part of the equation here, is Nashville is looking at what the next contract is going to look like and deciding if they're comfortable with that.
Yes, that is a key piece of the equation for sure. Let's ask you about a couple other guys, Elliot, that I know you've been keeping tabs on. So you mentioned Tommy Novak, and we discussed this a few months ago, right before he got injured, which kind of set him back a ways. And now if you look at his last 7 games, his offensive numbers are starting to come around. Yes, no question about it. There's no doubt he is unique because he's a late bloomer, and he's not the greatest player in his own end, but he's got skill, and that's hard to find. And as you mentioned, that's what the Predators are looking for. So what do you think what's the latest temperature on what they're looking at with him?
Well, I know teams are looking at him because when I make my calls right now, I get people ask me, what are you hearing on Novak? What are you hearing on Novak? So that's kind of why I wrote it, because I definitely think there's interest in him. Everything I have heard is that the Predators are trying to sign him, and they would prefer to keep him. But it's kind of like what we're just talked about with Saros. You have to get there, right? It's always a grind, and there's still a little bit of time. But I am under the impression that the Predators are trying to sign him, and they would like to sign him. And until I have any reason to believe otherwise, or that it's not going to happen, that is where I'm going. So I'm just leaving it there for now. That it is the Predators' goal to sign him. Now, one of the things I've been asking people, I remember, Willie, you asked me a while ago, what is the range here? Because there isn't a lot of history there. And most guys seem to think it'll be in the 4s. And that's a wide disparity. There's a big difference between, say, 4.1 and 4.75. But that's the number I seem to get. Now, I have to stress that's not coming from the Predators. It's not coming from Novak's representatives. But I asked a couple of other teams, what do you think the ballpark here is? And that's kind of where it came in.
That's a really interesting number, and the term, of course, is part of the formula there too. And
yes.
Because the question I get asked a lot, and this is, I think, debatable because we don't know the answer, is he a number 2 center on a winning team that can go deep into the playoffs, knowing that he's not a great face-off guy, he's not a big guy. As you mentioned, the prototypical number 1 center like a Barkov can play anywhere, anytime, all situations. He's going to score. Novak is not that, but he's got a special offensive skill set. So what's the right budget for that? $4 million for some people might sound a little high on a winning team. And then there's the other part of he's doing well here, so is it worth in Nashville taking a little hometown discount knowing that you fit somewhere in there? Whereas you go into sort of an unknown as an overpaid guy.
I think there's a couple answers there. Number one, if the Predators have shown in the past, guys like Colton Sissons, is that they'll give you term if you take a little bit less. And there are players, like a guy like Novak, who took a long time to peak, they tend to listen to that. So if you told me that Novak came in under that number because he took term, I would completely understand that. I have seen lots of players do that over the years. So that is definitely one thing. Now, the Predators have another advantage, no state tax in Tennessee. But one of the things that players do when that happens is they want guarantees, like no trade guarantees and things like that, because they don't want their contract to devalue if they happen to get traded to a place where the state taxes or the provincial taxes are more punitive. But those are the kinds of things that the Predators can do. I do think there's something to they know him and he knows them. I always think that that's an advantage. But the other thing about it is, like a player like Novak, I think a lot of teams will say, it's not that we see him as our second-line center or our third-line center. I think teams are a bit different now in the sense that they talk about players like him as offensive players. You talk about putting him in a position where he can succeed. Like, you're right, he's not going to take a big D-zone draw, but he can score. And scoring in this league gets you paid. That's number one. And scoring in this league, although it sounds really stupid to say, I think sometimes people forget it, scoring in this league wins you championships. And when you have a team that's looking for offense, like Nashville is, I think there's a recognition that Novak is a bit unique, and he gives them something that they don't have a ton of. But so
Agreed.
This is the push and pull of the negotiation. But like I said, what I've heard is that the Predators intend to sign him, and that I think teams are asking about him. And I think the reason they're asking is they want to know if the Predators think they're actually going to be able to sign him, because he's going to have interest if they don't.
How about Alex Carrier? I'm hearing a lot about him right now.
Well, I think there's a lot of D out there. Teams are always looking for D, and Carrier's had a pretty good year. It's been interesting. Like Carrier, when that first year, when he was on when he was like an all-rookie defenseman or right at that level, people were really impressed. He signed with the Predators. It's kind of been up and down a little bit, but he's having a good year at the right time. He's a solid player. He's I've seen the word low maintenance to describe him, and you can't underestimate how much teams really like that. I think the issue with Carrier is that a lot of the teams that are trying to take the big swings, they're looking at the Hannafins and the Tanos. So either you have to wait for that process to end, or you have to say, look, we're either not getting one of those two guys or we can't afford to get one of those two guys, and we'll look at a Carrier. So I think he's kind of in that second tier behind the Tanev-Hannafin tier, and unless you're out of that race, he probably has to wait until that clears up first.
I agree. Low maintenance, no question. Great personality. He's got the intangibles for sure. What about Yakov Trenin?
Then he can't work in sports media if he's low maintenance. There's no room for those kinds of people here.
That's right. What about Yakov Trenin, who's a guy that has got that sort of playoff profile, physical, bottom six kind of guy, can kill penalties. What's the market for him?
Well, I haven't heard a lot about Trenin, so I'll ask around. I don't like you giving me all this homework, Willie. It's not fun. I got to tell you, I thought homework
got
was
enough
over
on your plate, right?
When I got out of university. But I haven't heard as much about him, but I'll ask around. But again, he ran over someone the other night, right? So, people notice that kind of thing. He's tough. As you said, he plays hard. And I would bet that there are people looking at him, because you can never have too many of that in the playoffs. But I confess, I haven't heard anything specific.
All right, Elliot Friedman is with us. Last one from me, Elliot. I've seen a bunch of mock trades by some of your colleagues over at Sportsnet. This one is by Ryan Dixon, a potential trade between New Jersey and the Predators. So New Jersey would get UC Saros and Alexander Carrier. To Nashville,
Yep.
Forward Dawson Mercer, defenseman Seamus Casey, a couple of goalies, and that are on expiring contracts, Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid, and then also a 2025 first-round pick, top 5 protected first-round pick from New Jersey. Your initial thoughts on the mock trade?
Good job with the
I'll tell you,
names.
that was sorry. What's that?
Now I was telling Caroline, good job with the names. I like it.
Very, very good, Caroline. I got to tell you, if that was on the table, I think Nashville would like that. Like that Dawson Mercer kid, he is really talented. Really talented. He hasn't had a great year, but that happens sometimes. He's a really, really talented player, and he has high respect around the league. Like I think if the Predators made a deal and that was the kind of kid they got back, they would be very, very happy about that. Now I will say this: I believe that like some of the teams that have been dealing with the Devils on other issues have asked about Mercer, and I believe they've been told no. So, but you never know what can happen, right? I know he's a player the Devils value. If he was on the table, I think that would excite the Predators a lot. Casey, I haven't seen him a lot, but I've heard good things. But again, like I don't watch Ryan, who wrote that, Ryan Dixon, he really watches the prospects a lot more than I do. I have enough to do at the NHL level, but I know he's a really talented kid. But I'll say this. If Mercer was available, there would be teams who would drive to New Jersey to go pick him up. So if in some world that deal happened, I think the Predators would be very happy with that, and their fans would eventually be happy with that too, because Mercer is a real talented young kid.
Interesting. Well, Elliot Friedman, always appreciate your insight and always appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by, Elliot. We'll chat next week.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it. You too. Elliot Friedman, he is the very best. We will react to what he had to say there. Interesting that he said yes to the potential trade. It leads me to believe that that's probably not on the table if that was a trade package that so many GMs in the league would be excited about. But I did want to get Willy's thoughts on Jerry Stackhouse's post-game comments last night. Vanderbilt hosted Georgia. Vanderbilt lost to Georgia by double digits. And Jerry Stackhouse had some interesting post-game comments last night, and we will react to that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash. Problem.
Let's talk Loan Pronto. They've got the ways that they can help you wipe out some credit card debt or get in a general better position financially. Right now, Loan Pronto has a cash out refinance rate of about 5.49%. That's a huge drop. So you can refinance right now, get cash out of your home's equity, wipe out all the credit cards and high interest loans, save hundreds of dollars every month with lower payments. So there's two ways of doing it. If you've got the good primary mortgage, keep that intact and go with the Express Equity line of credit. You get the cash you need to address those bills, and you keep that primary mortgage locked in. If your mortgage rate right now is higher, then you can do the refi now and get a better rate and save those hundreds of dollars every month. In fact, if you go that route, you can call today and skip your next 2 mortgage payments. So that is another reason to call Loan Pronto right now. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. That's loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, 5.49%, has 6.39% APR, subject to lender approval.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We are broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Willy Donick joins us from L.A. The Predators are in action tonight, taking on the L.A. Kings. Puck drop at 9:30. So everybody drink your coffee.
Whoo, 9:30.
It's going to be a late one.
Man.
But it's going to be a good one.
Come on, Willy. You
ESPN
should have
Plus
got
tonight.
that changed.
Just a heads up, Caroline, with your little espresso machine.
Oh, yes.
A little affogato would probably be the best bet. Put a little vanilla in there. It's a good way to go.
That's a man of many suggestions right there.
Seriously. Nick Frazier is our go-to guy for everything.
Anything. Hey, Nick, how you build a skyscraper? Nick could be able to tell us.
Yeah.
My cousin is he is going into that field, so I'm just putting that out there.
I swear, if you need anything, the Frazier family has got you covered.
We are many traits to this family.
And we appreciate you. Well, last night, the Vanderbilt Commodores fall to the Georgia Bulldogs 76-64, and that is, it's just a continued trend of this Vanderbilt basketball team. It wasn't even the final score. It was just how lackadaisical they have looked, not just last night, but in so many games over the past few weeks and past few months throughout conference play. I mean, Vanderbilt basketball is a shell of what we know it can be. What Memorial Gym looks like on any given night. It's just knowing what it can be, knowing what Memorial Magic has looked like in the past and looking at what it is this season. It's depressing. But Jerry Stackhouse was asked last night, because that has been, I know, in Vanderbilt circles, a massive topic of conversation is when we're moving on from Jerry Stackhouse. Jerry Stackhouse was asked about his job security last night. This is what he had to say.
It's one thing about my job is that, whatever I got hired here to do a job, and I've been trending in the right direction for a long time. Like, I probably heard more things about net this year than I've ever heard about our net. The last 4 years before that, when we increased our net every year, I hadn't heard anything about that. So we've been doing a lot of good things, trying to trend in the right direction, and I know it's a lot of noise out there, a lot of things, but one thing I can say, no weapons formed against me shall prosper. You know what I'm saying? Because I got faith with the man upstairs that he put me in this position for a reason, and everything that I'm going through right now, with this team and off the court, it's ordained, and it's stuff that's gonna make me better, and I really feel about that. I hate that some of the narrative that keeps coming back, deals with a tweet or something from 21. I mean, if I could take it back, I wish I would. But at that point in time, that's how I felt, and that's how I addressed it. But at the same time, there was 12 disciples, right? And there's only one of them was a Judas. There's a lot of people pulling for me, and there's a lot of people pulling for our team. And I just try to think about those people and make sure that I continue to do my job and focus on these guys and helping them get better, and then I'll live with the result from there.
A lot to unpack there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot there from Jerry Stackhouse. First and foremost, he brings up net. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to hear about net. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody cares about that. Yes, of course, when you get into tournament time and you're talking bubble teams, you're breaking down KenPom, you're breaking down net, you're breaking down all the numbers. Nobody's talking tournament with this Vanderbilt team. Nobody cares about net. People care about winning games and losing games. And frankly, this Vanderbilt team has been losing far too many games and winning far too few games. So no, I don't tell me about net. Don't tell me about how this team has been on an upward trajectory since you've taken over this team. Last year was really fun for Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. I was banging on the table for Vanderbilt to be a tournament team because I felt like they deserved it, and I felt like they were playing like a tournament team at the end of last season. It has been a drop-off of epic proportion this season. This team's not on an upward trajectory. I could understand it if you lost all your players and you had a couple of young guns that were really exciting to watch and really fun. They just need a little bit more experience. That's not where this Vanderbilt program is at right now. I don't know where the reason for optimism is for this basketball team. So don't tell me, but we're not talking enough about net. Nobody cares about net. Win games. That's what people care about.
I think what he was referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Willie, I think he was saying that people are bringing it up this year, which means it's a bad thing. Like they're nowhere close to being a tournament team, and we know that. Just look at their record.
They've won 2 conference games.
But he was saying in the previous years when they were close and they were trending, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Willie, when they were trending and seeming to go in the right direction, no one was talking about the net and how the net should have put them in the tournament, and they end up not making the tournament. I think that's what he was referring to that. And then again, because I'm a stickler on words, he first said, like you said, he first talked about his progression, and then he came back and said we had been progressing. He went from we are progressing, and then as he started to talk more, I just think he slipped up with his words when he said we are progressing, but he had to go back and say, well, we were progressing, but this season has been a challenging season. And this is whether they fire, Stackhouse or not, listen, I didn't go there, but I do like the program, football, basketball, baseball, all of it. I do like it because it's here in the city. And, we support them and they support our station with having guys on and coaches on. But I'm trying to look at it from this standpoint. For those that were calling for his job last year, if you're calling for his job this year, then great. Fine. I get it. It's not like you all of a sudden started calling for his job this year and you weren't last year. If you were not calling for his job last year because you saw that the team was progressing, and like you said, Caroline, they fell off the map this year. Yeah. Why, I do not know that, but they fell off the map. But if you weren't calling for his job last year and you're vehemently calling for his job this year, it's like, hold on. If he was trending sort of the right way last year and he's had this horrible season, shouldn't he be allowed an opportunity to make it up? I'm not saying he should or he shouldn't. I'm just looking at it from that standpoint. Now, again, if they fire him, then they fire him. I'm going to still come on the radio, and I'm going to have to talk about how bad this team was, and it would be the truth. But if they keep him, it's like, okay, you kept him, but knowing now, hey, listen, if you don't get this right next year, then you're gone. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's the way I approach it, because to me, for him to be where they were last year, considering all of the injuries that they had last year, and they still should have made the NCAA tournament, but they didn't. And then to see what they did this year, I can't pinpoint why it is this year, but I'm just not going to all of a sudden like, oh, his job, he needs to be fired, he's incompetent, this and that. I'm not going to say that. I don't care who the coach was, because it seemed like it was trending sort of in the right direction. It may have been slow, but it seemed like it was trending a certain way. And then for whatever reason, this season, it just fell off.
If this was year 2, I would be more willing to subscribe to that belief. Give him time. Look, last year was good. This year wasn't great, but give him time.
How many years he's been in 4? 5?
And he's missed the tournament all 5 years that he's been at Vanderbilt. The program cannot be in this place, in this condition, in year 5.
I watched that whole press conference, which was about 10 minutes long. And look, let's put the context in there. They had a really nice win over Texas A&M, and they followed it up with an absolute blowout with Tennessee, which was not surprising. But then they get a team that they, in theory, should match up better with, just kind of a mediocre Georgia team at home, and they were done at the half. It was over at halftime, and we've seen that happen too many times, especially at home this year. And Georgia is not a team that should have you beat on your home court at halftime. They are just a poor shooting team. They're not a good team. So let's try to wrap our arms around that a little bit. He's been there for 5 years. The first 2 years, he inherited a really tough situation. I don't know what could have been better. And he also had, on top of that, some really bad luck with injuries with some of the best players that he had, like Aaron Nesmith. Never really got a chance, to coach him. He developed some good players. And so years 3 and 4, I thought he could, I thought he was trending in the right direction. So it's so unique to go from being last year, where in my mind they should have made the tournament, but they were a bubble team. Right? Some years on the bubble you make it, and some years you don't. But that's the only time they've really even been on the bubble in the 4 years leading up to this year. And he didn't have much luck with injuries that year because Liam Robbins missed a lot of time. If he hadn't gotten hurt, I think that clearly could have been a team that could have won a game or two in the tournament. But you kind of are where you are now. It's not that they've fallen back. It's that they've completely cratered. And where is the program going from here? The outlook doesn't look good. That is my biggest thing. He gets very, very sensitive, Coach Stackhouse, with the criticism on social media. Some coaches can let it roll off their back. He gets very sensitive to it, right? And he's learned, I think, to not fire back at people on social media, but it bothers him, right? He has done it in the past. I don't know what he was referring to specifically. And he said, I wish I could take that back. I'm not sure exactly
what was he referring to.
I think there have been times where he's engaged. He's engaged in some, I'll go back at a fan who's coming at me kind of thing.
The fake bleep.
And he said, look, a lot of noise, because look, the Vanderbilt fan base is exasperated, right? They've watched the football situation. They try to hang their hat on basketball as being and they got hope last year. It was so much fun last year to watch that team go on a run and beat Kentucky at Rupp Arena in a game where Liam Robbins got hurt early, and you thought, oh, no chance. They beat him. They beat him again in the SEC tournament. They beat 6 or 7 other teams down the stretch that played in the NCAA tournament. They had some memorial magic. They won 2 more games in the NIT. There was such a good feeling. But as we said, They lost 6 guys to the transfer portal. They brought in 6 new guys, and the net result is a big, big drop-off, right? Then they obviously they lost Robbins to graduation. There's just a lot of reasons. I kind of went through it player by player the last time we had this discussion. And we know with the transfer portal stuff now, they're probably going to have some other guys leave. What's coming back next year? You know, you don't have Ezra Mignon, who is obviously their best player, and he's one guy you can say is having a good year. They won't have Tyron Lawrence, who they worked hard to get back, and he hasn't had a good season at all. They don't have a big man at all. They don't have shooters. So they are starting from scratch, and that's the concern for me. He says, I do have a lot of people pulling for me, despite the noise. And I do think that's true. Like, I think Candace Story Lee, Dr. Lee, the athletic director, she wants to give you every benefit of the doubt, right? But I think she's in a tough spot. He was the coach of the year last year, and then you have this happening, and it is year 5. I'm pulling for him. I think Jerry Stackhouse is a good coach, but they just don't have an SEC team right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty on where they're going to go from here. So it's a crossroads for sure. There's just absolutely no momentum right now. It's tough to watch. Like when you can't, like if they're fighting and they scrap their way to a win over Georgia last night, and they're fighting against these top 10 teams and they're tough to beat on their home court, that would be one thing. But that's just not happening right now. They've had no momentum at all. It's just completely cratered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has, and for whatever reason. I mean, but listen, the last 3 seasons, you know, he went from 3 wins to 7 wins to 11 wins, and then this season is cratered. Obviously, we know in the 7 wins and 11 wins, the players were better. My thing to Vandy is this. Go out and pay some players. Get some players in here. Open up that NIL wallet. Pay some players, and then see if he can really coach. Because it seems like when he had some players, it seemed like they were sort of trending in the right way.
Right.
If I'm lying, somebody please tell me that I'm lying. That's not what you're seeing.
If recruiting weren't under his, let's say he's the coach and there's a GM that's responsible for the players.
Yeah, so he has to go out and get the players.
I think if you give him good players, I think he wins. I think he's a very good game coach. I think he's very good at developing talent. There's some things that I think are puzzling, like his rotations sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like he played Rivera Torres, a very talented freshman, last night. He played him 3 minutes. There are other nights where he's probably the most talented freshman that they have. You could say maybe Rice, the kid from Goodpasture, is a talented player. But there are nights where he plays 3 or 5 minutes and isn't in there. So it's really it's hard to figure out the patterns of the rotation sometimes. But that's one thing. But I still think overall, if you give him SEC talent and you put him head-to-head with the other coaches in the league, I think he's fine. I think he's a very good coach. But the player, he doesn't have enough SEC players to win. He's having to overachieve to get close, and he's responsible for the players. He is the recruiter that has to bring in the talent. The
You're
NIL, right. Does he have the NIL budget that other teams do? Probably not, but I do think that they're trying to work in that area there. Mm-hmm. So I give him a little slack on that, but not 7-19 in year 5. That's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is really hard to coach in college sports. We talk about it a lot in college football, but college sports in general. You're dealing with the transfer portal. You're dealing with NIL. You are bending the knee to 14, 15, 16-year-olds across America. You're on the recruiting trail. You're gone every weekend. You don't have holidays. You don't have weekends. It's hard to coach at the college level. You have to want to be in it 110,000%. And I think that Jerry likes coaching at this level. I genuinely do. I'm not questioning his love for the game or his love for coaching. But it's the want and the willingness to recruit. And that is the really difficult thing, especially when you have a disadvantage in the NIL resources department. All right, coming up next, Ali Melnicki, our friend from Zen Sports, will join us. Get the best bets of the week and of the weekend. Ali Melnicki coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What's going on, my good people in Nashville? We got Allie Melnicki coming up in a couple of minutes here, and she's going to talk about, lines and everything else when it comes to sports. And we got more sports to bet on. So if you're going to bet on these sports, you need to do it with our partners in sports. And I'm excited to tell you about their introductory promotion, as I have been, and I'm still excited. Available to all customers here in Tennessee is the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager when you place your first bet on Zen Sports. You will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses, up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched their VIP program to the premier bettors here in Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only, so if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, bettors? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That's Zen Sports. Betting just got better. And always remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. It is red hot in Milwaukee. Admirals just won their 18th straight. It's Askarov's 5th shutout in the last 14 games. I'm just looking at some clips on Twitter. It looks packed.
I'm sure it is.
I don't know how many AHL teams get sold out. I don't know if it's sold out, but look packed. I like that. So good for the Admirals. That team is red freaking hot. The crowd goes wild. Joining us now is our friend Ali Melnicki from Zen Sports. Ali, appreciate you for joining us. First and foremost, the Predators have a very important game tonight, taking on the LA Kings in LA. The Predators are a 1.5-goal dog on the road. Who do you like in this one?
I'm right here in LA, but I'm taking the Preds. I picked them to beat the Golden Knights the other day. I think they're getting hot on the road, so I'm going to side with the Preds to pull off the upset here.
What a great pick from you to take the Preds to beat the Vegas Golden Knights. You are a very popular woman here in Nashville, Ali. Looking at the NBA side of things, we've got the Suns and the Mavs going down tonight. So Luka Doncic has scored 30 or more points in 5 of his last 6 games against the Phoenix Suns, which is wild. Do you think he can do it again tonight?
I do. I'm not one that tends to go against the trends that often, so I'm going to ride it out till it falls. I think he puts up a big game coming off the All-Star break. He got some nice rest during All-Star weekend, so I think he goes over 31.5 points, which is the number on Zen Sports right now.
Now, with that being said, and I'm glad Caroline brought up the NBA, who has the greatest odds at winning at this point at winning the MVP? I know Embiid is out, so that puts him out. Obviously, if he was still playing, he would be number 1. But now that Embiid is out, who is number 1?
You still got Jokic. He's number 1 right now, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's right up there with him. I think those are the 2 front runners, and bearing someone else that just comes out of nowhere, I think it's going to come down to the 2 of them. I'll give Jokic the nod. He was MVP the year before. Embiid got it last year. He could have gotten it last year as well. So I'm going to go with Jokic.
Our friend Ali Melnicki from Zen Sports is with us. Looking about the NHL and NBA side of things, what are maybe some of your favorite bets of the night or best bets of the night, whether it's props, money lines, spreads, so on and so forth?
I like the Golden State Warriors -6.5 home favorites against the LA Lakers. I know LA's been playing better as of late, but it's hard for them to beat Golden State in that stadium. I'm going with Steph Curry to go over his point total and the Lakers or the Warriors to cover 6.5.
Ali, I got a quick one for you. I saw where Purdue is right there at number 1 again. They lost the other day to Ohio State, and it gave people kind of that flashback, those chills. People like me who picked them to go deep in the tournament last year and saw them go up in flames in the first round. They look kind of the same to me. They're going to be high-seeded again, but they look like they could be beat on a given night. What do you think of them as like a long-term play in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I wasn't high on them last year. I had them actually losing in the Sweet 16. They lost in the first round, so that didn't hurt my bracket too much. I ended up winning with UConn at all. I just think Purdue, it's basically the same team. I think that they will win in the first round, depending on who their opponent is. But I think that there may be a Sweet 16 team, a Elite 8 team at top. I just don't see them making a big run. The Big Ten isn't as strong as we've seen the past few years. Michigan's right at the bottom. Michigan State's not as good. Yeah. Wisconsin goes on and off. So I'm not high on any Big Ten teams this year.
It really does feel like it's Purdue
D-Mase,
and
not high in the Big Ten.
Hey, don't worry about it, Allie, because March is what? Izzo time, okay? That's Izzo time is March, so I'm not worried about it.
You never underestimate Tom Izzo when it comes to March Madness.
My shoulders hurt from carrying the show and being a basketball school representation. It's hard being good at everything. My goodness, I'm just kidding. Ali Melnicki, Zen Sports. Ali, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for whoa. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back at tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company's up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.